Welcome. This is a 45-minute flow practice, and the emphasis for class today will actually be on Ardha Uttanasana, which is the halfway lift position. And a great compliment I got from someone, he's actually one of my brother's friends from childhood, was this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He said, "I like your classes because you actually teach the halfway lift position." And I asked him what he meant, and he said that you actually, me being you, actually have people hold the position because it is a position. He said it feels good, and that is something I believe in because I think it feels good. And just the term Uttanasana, UT stands for deliberate. So of course purposeful, and then Tan is stretch. So Uttanasana, the deep forward fold position, is a deliberate stretch, but then so is the halfway. It's not half the deliberation. So we're going to jump right into it. So please start in downward facing dog position. So in downward facing dog, have your hands wide and your feet about hip distance apart. Actively push down with your hands. Bend your knees and tilt your sit bones up into the air. And that's something that will be emphasized quite a bit in the practice today, is to get the slight arch in the low back, especially in Ardha Uttanasana. On an inhale, move forward to plank pose, the top of a push-up. And just for this first one, begin with your knees down, bend your elbows, and slowly lower all the way to the floor. Point your toes. Inhale, lift your chest, rise up into low cobra position where you're using primarily spinal strength. And then push back to all fours and back to downward facing dog. Take a big breath in and a big breath out. And then look forward towards your hands. Slowly step forward to the front of your space. On an inhale, lengthen your spine, lift up halfway. What is your natural tendency? And exhale to fold in. And place your hands to your hips, elbows to the sides, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up to stand. And release your arms alongside you. Just one round of sun salutation A. And in particular, noticing that it's just a pulse, a dance between back bending and forward folding, which could be considered a dance between yes and no. So expansion and contraction. So on an inhale, swing your arms up, even lean back. And then on an exhale, dive forward, touch the ground. Inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. And then exhale, step back to plank pose. We'll just spend an extra breath here, pausing at the top. Inhale. And then exhale, lower down halfway or all the way. Inhale to the back bend. And then exhale and push it back, downward facing dog. Deep breath in. And deep breath out. Again, deep breath in. And deep breath out. And one last time, full breath in. And full breath out. Look forward, bend your knees, step or hop towards the front of your space. Inhale, lengthen your spine. Back bend, exhale, and fold in. And then reverse the dive, rise all the way up, reach the arms up, join your hands together, and bring your hands down in front of your heart. Release your arms. Bend your knees now, chair pose. So the emphasis, of course, on the back bend for Ardha Uttanasana sometimes gets lost, and especially keeping the hands down on the floor. I don't do a very good job at it, and part of that is just the lack of flexibility in my hamstrings. So one way to be a little bit more deliberate with the halfway lift is starting here in chair pose, tilt forward and then bring the hands to the knees. And we'll be specific, it'll actually be the top of the shin, so just below the kneecap there's a little bony protrusion called the tibial tuberosity. Then tilt forward so your torso's, we'll say, paralleler to the floor, because The spine, of course, isn't straight. And then now keep the knees bent, push the knees into the hands. Notice if your hands start to hyperextend like that, curl the fingers so that the hands can stay soft. And then as you push the knees forward into your hands, move your hips back, get a little arch in your low back. Continue the action of pushing your knees forward into your hands, but straighten your legs. So you can still do both at the same time. And that gets me smiling because that is a deep stretch. Whew. And then touch the hands down. Now, can you do that in one breath? Inhale, lengthen the spine, hands to the tops of the shins. So it's not that position where you move the shins back. It's pushing the shins forward, arching the low back, and then diving in one more time. Inhale, lift and lengthen. And exhale to fold. Step your right foot back, lower your knee to the floor, and float your arms up into the air for a low lunge position. Actively push down with your feet. Reach the arms up high. Big stretch, lift. And then plant your hands and step back to plank pose, top of a push-up. Pause to hold here. Deep breath in. And then exhale, lower down halfway or all the way. Inhale for your back bend. And then push it back to downward facing dog. On an inhale, lift your right leg behind you. Exhale, pull your knee in. Again, lift your right leg back. And pull your knee in. And one last time, lift the leg back. Pull the knee in. And use that to step your foot forward. And this time, rise up, place your hands to your hips and pause. Full breath in. And full breath out. Then float your arms up into the air. On your next exhale, dive forward, touch the ground, and step forward. Standing forward fold. Bend the knees a little bit. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Hands to the tops of the shins. Push the shins forward. Move the hips back. Try to arch your back and tilt your pelvis. Instead of tucking under, tilt the pelvis forward to get the little arch in the low back. And then bow in. Place your hands to your hips, elbows to the sides, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up to stand. Just showing how 2 blocks can be really helpful. You could use a chair. I, no joke, will sometimes start with my blocks that high. I need like the super high blocks. They don't make blocks big enough in that setting. Getting ready for round 2. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, dive forward. I will literally practice like this with my hands on the blocks, bowing in, bending the knees. Inhale, lengthening spine, lift up for the halfway position. So trying to get the spine almost to the horizontal. Keep the hips back, arch, and then push the legs straighter. And then exhale, dive in. Step the left foot back this time. Lower the knee to the ground and float your arms up into the air. You're welcome to bend a little bit deeper into the front knee. Okay, then hands down and step back to plank pose. Breath in, then lower down halfway plank. Inhale back up to plank. Woo! And then lower down halfway plank, called chaturanga. Lift for your back bend. And then press it back to down dog. Inhale, lift your left leg back behind you. Exhale, knee in. And again, left leg back. And pull the knee in. And one last time, leg back. Pull the knee in. And step the foot forward. Inhale to rise up, stretch the arms up high. And then exhale, dive forward, step forward. Slight change here, and part of this is I've got the elastic band. Not everyone is going to have one, but wrapping the band around, and it of course pulls the legs in. So then the action here of the muscles of the legs is to push the band out to resist that. And that's just a really powerful technique that you can apply yourself just with your own hands. So inhale, lift for the halfway lift position where the hands are to the front of the shins. Push the shins forward, move your hips back, get the arch in your low back, but then now slide your hands to the outside of your knees. Use your hands pushing the knees closer together to then resist back by pressing your knees out, and feel that your glutes can get stronger that way with the arch in the low back. Keep the push of the knees out. Work the legs straighter from here, and then exhale and dive in. The advantage of the band is it just stays in that position of resistance all the time. And I imagine that every time I then come up for a halfway lift, lengthen the spine. Woo! And exhale to fold. Hands to the hips, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up to stand. And then step out of the band. Just a little bit of a pause here. Lift your right leg, hold on to your knee. Stage 1, stay here. Stage 2, hold under your thigh and stretch your leg straighter in front of you. And then stage 3, no support at all. Reach your arms up into the air. Smile, cheese, cheese. Lower your foot and switch sides. Lift your left leg, hold onto your knee. Bend your standing leg, move your hips back, hold under your thigh, and then stretch your leg straighter. Look forward. Final stage, reach the arms up into the air. Hold, breathe. Okay, then lower your foot, clasp your hands behind your back, and dive forward. Bound Uttanasana. Okay, just showing the versions of blocks. So another way I use the 2 blocks is I put the lower one at the lowest setting and then put the next one slightly higher. You can actually switch it to that way as well. You give more surface area for your hands. But on an inhale, lengthen the spine, lift up. Again, just going lower, lower, lower. And for some of you, you could probably have just started with keeping the hands on the ground. I'm doing this for lack of flexibility. So holding halfway lift position, pushing the knees forward, pushing the knees out to the side, engaging the glutes, arching the low back, push the legs straighter. Remember to breathe. And then dive forward. Step your right foot back behind you. Lower your knee to the floor. And then rise up. Join your hands together in front of your heart. Deep breath in and twist it to the left. I like to make the fist with the lower hand and wrap the other hand over top. Just feel it stronger. Shows off my muscles more. Option, of course, you could lift your back knee if you want to make it a little bit more fiery. I like the stretch component of this position. Okay, on an inhale, untwist. Touch your hands down, step back to plank, or have your knees down. Just a bit more of a challenge this time with a 3 count. Down, up, and then down again. There will be a hold in the middle. So slowly lowering down to the chaturanga position, pausing to hold for 2, 3, rising back up, 2, 3, and then lowering either halfway or all the way to 3. Lift for your back bend. And then push it back. Lift your right leg behind you. Pull your knee in. And again, lift the right leg back. Pull the knee in and step your foot forward. Turn your left foot out so it's at a 45-degree angle. You can either have the hips or the heels hip distance apart or heels in line with each other, up to you. And then slowly rise up, hands to your hips for Warrior 1 position. In general, Warrior 1 is square to the front of your mat. It can be a little bit tricky to get the hips all the way to square, but definitely square the chest. And then float your arms up into the air. The eventual full form of this pose is front thigh parallel to the floor. Getting close to that, reach the arms up, stretch all the way. Spread your fingers. One more breath in. And then on an exhale, bow down and step forward. Standing forward fold. Just changing the blocks. I'm going 2 blocks, but all of them at the highest setting, so not stacking them up on each other. And even as you use blocks, you could have the hands flat on fists or on fingertips, so it can still change the height. Bend the knees, push the knees out, move your hips back, try to broaden your sit bones. Inhale, lift for the halfway lift position. Get the arch in the low back. Arch is primary, and then stretch your legs straighter. So not this position, and then try to arch. This does nothing for me. Nothing. Arch back, hips back, stretch the legs straighter. Kookaburra sounds, hands to the hips, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up. Nicely done. Big stretch up, inhale. Exhale, dive forward. Lowering the blocks to the middle setting. Inhale, halfway lift, lengthen the spine. Push the knees out. Work the legs straighter. Getting the arch in the low back gets harder and harder and harder for me as we go lower, lower, and lower. And then step your left foot back. Lower your knee to the floor. Float your arms up. And then hands together. Turn to the right. Hook the left elbow to the outside of the knee. And you're always welcome to go into binds or spreading the wings. Sometimes I like to do just the base position really, really well. I'm the student who goes to a yoga class and I'll just be like, no, I'm just going to do Shavasana really well for 60 minutes. And people be like, what? Why don't you just sleep? And I'm like, this isn't sleep, I'm Shavasanaing. Different. Okay, on an inhale, untwist, reach your arms up. And then bring your hands down. I often will practice with 2 blocks for my hands like this. And then step it back to plank. That 3 count again. When your hands are on the block and you get down low, it can give your chest the ultimate stretch. So a 3 count to lower. 3, 2, 1. Hold. 3, 2, 1. Rise. 3, 2, 1. And lower. 3, 2, 1. Lift for the back bend. And then push back to downward facing dog. And down dog with the blocks actually changes it a little bit more bowspringy style into a slight crouching cat position. Inhale, lift your left leg back. Pull your knee in. And one last time, leg back. And knee in. This makes this transition easier because you can step the foot all the way forward. You don't have to pull it forward. Turn the right foot out and rise up, hands to hips, warrior 1. I think cork blocks are a bit easier. These foam ones can slide a bit on the mat, which makes it unstable. Then float your arms high up into the air. Big reach and lift. Settle down lower. And then one more breath in. And touch the hands down and step forward, standing forward fold. Just moving back a little bit. Now, got the blocks at the lowest setting. There are actually blocks that are even shorter in height that you can use. I know I have some of those. This is where it gets a little bit trickier for me. Bend the knees, move the hips back. Inhale for the halfway lift position, trying to get the arch in the low back. So a little bit of a trench in the low back. So that might mean bending the knees quite a bit to start, get the arch, and then push the legs straighter. Imagine the hands are to the outside of the knees. Push the knees out into that resistance. Lengthen the spine. You don't have to lift the chin. You can just look towards the front part of your mat, but lengthen through the crown of your head. Breath in. And then breath out, hands to hips. Inhale, slowly rise all the way up. And then release your arms alongside you. Lean over to your right foot. Just have a little bit of a tree break. Left foot to your upper inner thigh. You could go inner shin, inner ankle. And then hands together in front of your heart. Whew. Halfway lift, intense. It's interesting, I watched that pose a lot, and I'd say most people aren't paying attention. And you miss out on the amazing stretch. Okay, just switch to the other side. Lower your foot and then lift the right foot. Wasn't sure if I was mirroring you. But it's not any of you. I think you're all doing amazing. I see it. I'm already getting a little nervous though because the blocks are moving on. So I would almost always use the blocks. Almost always. Not always, but almost always. There was a time when the studios didn't have blocks. Lower the foot down. So now blockless in Victoria. Inhale, float your arms up. Exhale and dive forward. And then now without block, staying on fingertips and having the hands forward, bend the knees. Try to arch the low back and then push the legs straighter. So it looks more like this and not like this. Or especially moving the legs into hyperextension. It's better to have bent knees and trying to get a back bend shape. Woo! Okay, and then hands down and step back to plank. Deep breath in. We'll do that 3 count again. Lower halfway. 3, 2, 1. Hold. 3, 2, 1. Rise. 3, 2, 1. And lower. 3, 2, 1. Lift for your back bend. And then push it back. Inhale, lift your right leg back. Exhale, pull your knee in. And again, leg back. And then knee in, pause and hold. And step the foot forward. Turn your left foot out. Keep the right hand down on the floor. Left hand to your hip, setting up for side angle pose. If it's tough to touch the floor, you could use a block. If that's still out of reach, you can go forearm to your thigh. But attempting to be on fingertips, just like we did for the Ardha Uttanasana. Twist to the left and then swing the left arm long, actively reach and extend out. Push the outside of the right knee into the right arm and vice versa. So you're matching the strength. Actively reach, one more breath in and then hand to the floor. Step back, deep breath in, 3 count. Lower, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Rise, 3, 2, 1. And lower, 3, 2, 1. Lift for your back bend. And then push it back. Inhale, lift your left leg back. Exhale, pull the knee in. Again, left leg back. And then knee in, use that to step the foot forward. Turn the right foot out, right hand to the hip. Adjust as needed. So getting low into the stance. Trying to get the front thigh at a square. Twist towards the right, and then reach the right arm long. Okay, one more breath in here. And then exhale, turn to the floor. Hands down, and again, going for a flow. Knees down is a-okay. You could just skip the 3 count as well. Just totally ignore me. That's what most people do. Lower halfway. 3, 2, 1. Hold. 3, 2, 1. Rise up. 3, 2, 1. And then lower. 3, 2, 1. Lift for your back bend. And then push it back. Step the feet in just a little bit. And then move your hands back. So before going hands flat, there is a stage from fingertips to hands flat, and it's just on fists. So you could be on fists and it's just a little bit higher up than hands flat. Knees bent, try to lift your butt up, push your knees out to the side, and then lengthen your spine. This is where it's just so hard for me. I just don't have the hamstring flexibility that I know that some of you do have. And then push the legs straighter from there. Ooh. And then you can even stay on fists as you bow in for a standing forward fold. Whoa. Okay, then hands to the hips, elbows to the sides, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up. Turn to the long edge of your mat and where I do use the blocks still quite a bit. Bend your knees forward and have your hands to your knees. So the knees bending forward means that the base of the thigh goes forward, which also then means that you can move the top of the thigh back, which tilts forward a bit with the pelvis. So it's a butt up position. Then hands to the outside of the knees, push the knees out, and then tilt till your shoulders are at the height of your hips. And this is the wide-legged forward fold Prasarda Padottanasana. So I'm going back to a higher setting for the blocks. And I'll go to this one. Keeping the arch in the low back, you could go to any of the variation we've done. And then now just push the legs straighter from there. Push the feet energetically out. Try to split your mat in two. I've seen it happen before. It's both hilarious and tragic at the same time when someone splits their mat in two. Definitely, there's a reason if you buy a mat for $3, brand new, it's probably not going to last. Hold strong, one more breath in, and then now dive forward. Just adding a little bit of a twist here. Again, I'll probably use just one block to make it a bit easier. Have your left hand on the floor just under your nose. Bring your right hand to your hip or low back. Twist to the right. If you like the hand going up in the air, you can go for it. Further is actually just crossing over and holding onto your ankle and twisting. So holding right ankle with left hand. If you want to, you can do that. And then turn to the floor and switch. So right hand under the nose, left hand to hip or low back, and twist to the left. Bend your knees, move your hips back. Push the knees energetically out, twist, push the legs straighter. Option to go arm up or hold the ankle. Okay, then hands to the hips and inhale slowly, rise all the way up. And then a little bit more Iyengar style here. Fingertips together like this, the chest, elbows out, bend your knees. On three, 1, 2, 3. That's hard if you didn't know what we were doing. Back to face the front of your mat. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, dive forward. So pausing here, going further, this is where I might not be able to show the best in terms of the examples, but go hands flat to the ground. Inhale, lengthen the spine, lift up halfway. This one is, I'd say, less of a stretch for me just because I don't have the flexibility in the hamstrings to get the arch in the low back. So I get more actually from that position than I do from hands flat. Ooh, and then step back, lowering down halfway. Pause and hold. Chaturanga, great pose. We've held it for 3 seconds. Just holding it this time. Inhale for your back bend. And then push it back. This time without lifting your leg behind you, just step your right foot forward. Turn your left foot out and rise up for warrior 2 position. Stretching the arms out. Settling into the front leg. Maybe look over the right fingertips. You could also look just a little bit off to the left. So you don't have to strain yourself as much. And then hands down, lift your back heel, just switching things up. Jump switch to change the other side. Turn the right foot out and rise up, warrior 2 pose, second side. Just being able to shift the transitions a little quicker. Okay, and then hands to the ground, and then step back to plank. Deep breath in, lower down halfway or all the way. Lift for your back bend, and then push back, step or hop a little bit forward. Keeping the hands flat here, lengthen the spine, lift up halfway. It's hard. I would say the likelihood is even as people do this, they might still rise to fingertips or at least to the knuckles, which is often called ridge tops, to just be on the knuckles and your fingers and have the wrists lift. The nice thing about being hands flatter to the ground is you can then start to work towards press handstand, which is just leaning forward rising to your tiptoes, maybe putting your weight back to your feet, and just doing that every day. And one day you just magically float up. It's totally magic. Do you believe in magic? Hands to hips, and inhale, slowly rise all the way up. Just a little bit of an interlude for the halfway lift position is if you were in a spot where you could put the top of your head to a wall, that is really powerful. It's a weird one to demonstrate because then I just stick my butt back to you. But if I'm in the halfway lift position, let's go hands to shins, and I put the top of the head to the wall and use the head pushing into the wall to then move the hips further back. Then extend the legs straighter. That is by far the most intense stretch, especially if I put the elastic band around the knees as well. But just the idea of having something to press the head into, if you've got the space to try that, it is life-changing, altering. There are ways to mimic that, which would be just to make a fist and put it to the top of the head. It's not quite the same because you actually have to resist back with your own arm strength, but it's still a pretty good replacement. So just a little bit of a body break there. Hinge forward again, standing forward fold. For further with this one, you kind of have to go feet together. I'm not going to be the best example of this because this is kind of final stage, but it's either to have the hands flat beside the feet or even further back. So I actually may have to show this with blocks. Ooh, that's so tough. That's the Uttanasana position. Uttanasana becomes an onomatopoeia, oot, where the word sounds like the pose. And then inhale, lengthen the spine. You might go ridge tops if you can actually keep your hands flat to the floor in line with your feet or further back. Whoa, Nelly. Okay, and then step back, lower down halfway. Inhale for your back bend, and then push it back. This time just step your right foot forward, turn your left foot out, and then adjust your right hand, straighten the right leg for triangle pose. Twist fully to the left. Option to go arm up into the air. Option to use a block as well. I sometimes like to do that just to bring it a little bit closer. Now bend into the front knee. If you are using the block, move it forward, setting up for half moon pose. Twist to the left. Same principles really apply here, which is you can go lower on the block, maybe even hand flatter to the floor. You could try press handstand here. That's a joke, but not a joke. And then we're going to do it in a reverse order. So just switching to half moon on the other side, left foot down, right leg lifts, twist to the right, right arm up into the air, hold. And then slowly landing for triangle pose, arm up into the air. Okay, and then turn to the floor, bend into the front knee, step back, lower down halfway or all the way, lift for your back bend, and then push it back. Look forward, step or hop forward. Another fun one is to have, I'll go feet hip distance apart. I'll show where you could go further, but again, I'm not a great example because this pose is so intense. Is hands then go behind the knees. So that like growth spot in the back of your knee that gets all sweaty. I've experienced significant rashes in that area from being in an air-conditioned car in Australia. It's a true story. It's gross. So you don't want to be right in that spot though. Just go a little bit lower, the fleshy part of your calf. And then use your hands to bend your knees forward. So the hands push energy forward. And then the legs say, no, and resist back, and then you bow into it. So your hands are creating the bend to the knee, which is creating the slack to try to keep an arch in the low back. And then you resist that. And it's harder to do in the halfway lift position. A little bit more as you bow in. Okay, and then touch the hands down. To go a little bit further is to go feet together. And then if you go feet together, you can hold onto the ankles and wrap your elbows behind your calves. And the same action applies here, where you pull the arms forward to bend the knees, and then you resist by straightening your legs. And in Bikram yoga, they call this making yourself a Japanese ham sandwich, which doesn't make the most sense. You have to look that one up for it to make sense. Okay, then hands in front of you. Step wide, hands to the hips. Slowly rise back up. Maybe you get a little bit of a jump shake. That's pretty intense. Last thing to change the halfway lift position. This is one that you can do as long as you got a yoga mat, is just roll up the front of the mat. And you're not stepping on the entire roll. Keep your heels on the regular mat and put the balls of your toes, so where your toes connect to the foot, on the roll. And then it's just the same action, whatever one you prefer and choose, but just with your toes and the balls of your feet higher, it is going to stretch the backs of your legs more. And I might go back to one of the higher settings here. Inhale, lengthen the spine, lift up halfway. Have mercy. Woo! Pushing the legs straighter. And then stepping off. And you could add another 10 poses, keeping that action. Be for another day. It'll be the rolled up mat class. Okay, step your right foot back. Lower your knee down. Wiggle the left foot forward. You can go into half splits position, or you're welcome to attempt towards fuller splits. And again, not necessarily the pose that I bust out to show off to everyone, but certainly a pose that gets my attention immediately. I rarely get bored in splits or start thinking about something else. It's a tough one. Okay, jump switch. Or, yeah, probably not jump switch, just slowly switch legs. Right leg forward. Being on the blocks just gives me the advantage, again, of not necessarily turning the pose into a rounded back position where it's a back stretch. I think back stretches are great if you have flexible hamstrings. If you don't yet, back stretches can turn into disc herders. Not like sheep herders, but like hurting. H-U-R-T, hurt. Like in case the closed captioning comes on. Okay, I'm going to use the blocks for one last flow here. Slowly slide out. Step back to plank pose. Pause at the top. Deep breath in. Lower down. Halfway. Chaturanga. Lift for the back bend. Extra bonus points going back to Chaturanga. Hold. And then up. Then back to down dog. Slide your right shin forward. For pigeon prep position, I'm just going to use the blocks and slowly lower down onto the elbows here. This one, less focus on going deep. If you want to keep it going with back bends, go for it. I'm just going to give softer imagery. So soften yourself like a little kitten in a blanket. And slow down your breath. You're doing great. Uttanasana. So to be deliberate and take your time. Going slower doesn't mean less. And things like slow flow, they don't have to be like brutally slow. Just hold the position for an actual breath for a few seconds. Okay, switch to the other side. Just push it back to down dog and then slide the left shin forward. You want to get lower down, you could always stack the hands and place the forehead to your hands. Okay, if it's easy to transition to just move to your left hip, then swing your right leg forward. Have the legs out in front of you. I usually go up onto a block for this one just because it makes it a bit easier, but sometimes the measuring stick is after stretching the legs out pretty good. Did it work? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Float your arms up. Ground down through the sit bones and then hinge forward. Oh, I can touch them. So that's probably more of a back stretch with a little bit of a leg stretch, kind of a combo. So I could actually benefit by bending the knees, and then that primarily is just leg stretch there. Whoa. Those that are flexible could put a block under your foot and even go into that long setting. Like that. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, then rise up, reach the arms forward, and slowly lower down onto your back, just into the unwind territory here. Bend your knees, feet flat. Move your hips a little to the left. Drop your knees over to the right for a reclined twist. Look over your left shoulder. You did great. So deliberate. So purposeful. Lift your legs up. Move your hips over to the right, drop your knees to the left. And I see it a lot just in what are often called vinyasa classes. And vinyasa can be translated one way as to place in a special way. And what I often see vinyasa is just really fast flowing, not holding, and not necessarily being deliberate in the movements. Feel that you first have to learn the poses by holding them, and then you can quickly transition between them. Slowly come up, shift the hips so they're in line with your shoulders, hug your knees in, maybe even lift your forehead to your knees, big squeeze. And then on an exhale, slowly release yourself out for a final resting position. Take a big breath in and a big breath out. Move your head side to side, wiggle your fingers and your toes. Option to stretch and reach your arms up over your head. And bend your knees and roll over to the left side. And push with your right hand to slowly rise up. Finishing in a tall seated position. Join your hands together in front of your heart. Committing to making your practice more deliberate, more purposeful, so that you can savor and enjoy the stretches as nourishment. Namaste.